Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll show you how to make a pretty boat neck sweater. Not much to say about this one, so I'll keep it brief. It's comfy with these luscious balloon sleeves, there's plenty of texture provided by the lovely sedge stitch, and the body is just the right length for when you want to be covered but still show off a little bit. Speaking of, if you're looking to make something worth showing off, you've come to the right place. We've got hundreds of modern crochet designs, sure to turn heads with even more coming, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on with the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 700 grams of yarn, and that's 1,300 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us something that you collect. When I was a kid, I would collect CI Boys and Trixie. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're first going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain the height that we want our shoulder band to be. Now I want mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 4. And now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our first row, which is going to be a slip stitch row. So start by blocking off that last chain, and we're going to do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So go ahead and bring your hook down into that second chain. And once we have 2 loops on our hook, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through both of those loops. That's our first slip stitch. Let's do this again. Into that next chain that we have, we're going to insert our hook into there, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And a really quick tip that I have when it comes to doing our slip stitches is once we finish every stitch, make sure we're not accidentally tugging on our working yarn after we finish every stitch, otherwise the following row can be really tight to work into. So let's do this again. So once more, into that following chain, insert your hook. And when we have 2 loops on our hook, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through both of those loops. And continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain until we reach the end of the row, just like me. And from here on out, we're going to be doing back loop slip stitch rows. So just to get it started, since we're along the edge, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Once when our work is flipped, we are going to find the last stitch from our previous row and then insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. And again, once we have 2 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops. Now there's our first back loop slip stitch. Let's do this again. Into that next back loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through everything. Into that next back loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through everything, making sure that we're not tugging too tightly on every stitch. And continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch until we reach the end of the row, like me. Now the following rows are all going to be back loop slip stitches with no increases and no decreases. So I'm just going to get started on this next row off with you guys. So to start off every row, chain 1, flip our work, and then just like the previous row, find the last stitch from our previous row, insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. And that's it. We're going to continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and at the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. And we're going to keep repeating this row until this portion that we have can stretch across our shoulders, making sure that we end on an even number of rows. And we do want to make sure that we are stretching this as if we're wearing it so that we don't accidentally make this too big. Go ahead and get your shoulder band all finished up, and then I'll meet you back to seam it all together. Alright, so I am back with my shoulder band. Now I have a total of 114 rows, and my total width is just about 21.5 inches or 52 centimeters, and that is unstretched. Now what we're going to do from here is seam the two ends together to form a circle. So we're all going to start by inserting our hook into the corner stitch of the front panel, which mine is already into there because it's the working yarn. And then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of the back panel. We just want to make sure that it's not twisted when we connect it. And once when our hook is in through both, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through everything on our hook, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now from here, we're going to be doing an outside loop slip stitch seam just so it looks like another back loop slip stitch row. So let's all start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, and then we're going to insert our hook in through that front loop or the loop that's nearest to us. So insert your hook into there. Now finding the next available stitch into the back panel, we're going to insert our hook into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. And then once we have those 3 loops on our hook, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Now there's the first one, let's do the next one. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert your hook only in through that front loop. And then into that next available stitch into the back panel, insert only in through that back loop, yarn over and pull through everything. And since I just have 1 more stitch left, I'll do this with you guys as well. So into that next stitch, insert in through that front loop, and then into the next stitch into the back panel, insert in through that back loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left. Once we don't have any more stitches, all we're going to do is single crochet across the top of our band. So from here, we're going to chain 1, and now we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into the top of every side row. So let's all start by finding our first side row. This raised row is my first. I'm going to insert my hook into the top of that side row, and then I'm going to single crochet once. So I'm going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Now this is my next row that I have right here. It's this divot. I'm going to insert my hook into the top of that side row, and then single crochet once, and that's it. Let's do this at 1 more time. This is my next side row, which is this raised row. Find that top loop, insert your hook into there with a single crochet, and then this divot is my next side row. So find that top loop, insert your hook, and then single crochet into there. And that's it. We're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so I am back and I have just finished up the single crochet row that we did along the bottom of our shoulder band. And right before we get started on the front and back panel, we're going to need to insert our stitch markers so we can separate the front and back panel to the sleeve portion. So getting started on separating our front and back panel, the front panel is going to be pretty simple. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is grab a total of 8 stitch markers, 4 of each color, and we're going to get started with our front panel first. So grab 2 of the same colored stitch markers, and the first stitch marker placement is going to be pretty easy. Insert your first stitch marker into any stitch that we have, making sure that it fits in between our body and our underarm. Now working our way across our chest, making sure that we are counting this stitch marker stitch, we are going to be inserting our stitch marker into an even numbered stitch that is also in between our body and our underarm on the other side. So if you guys have my numbers, I have a total of 32 stitches from stitch marker to stitch marker, and that's just about 9 inches or 23 centimeters. Now we're going to want to have the same amount of stitches for the back panel. So all we're going to do is find the same stitches that we have along the back, making sure that we have the same amount of stitches from stitch marker to stitch marker. Now we do want for our sleeve portion to have the same amount of stitches as well. So I'm going to insert my stitch markers into the back panel, making sure that I have the same amount of stitches in between, and just going to continue to adjust it until I have the same amount of stitches on both sides for my sleeves. Alright, so now that I have my stitch markers in for my front panel and in for my back panel, I'm going to take My remaining 4 stitch markers that I have, I'm just going to be inserting them into the next stitches that we have for our sleeve. So since this is my front panel, I'm going to insert my stitch markers into this sleeve portion. Now this is just so I can tell where the sleeve and the front panel is because they are nearly the same size. Just into that following stitch that we have, I'm going to insert my stitch marker into there, and then working my way towards the back panel, into the stitch that I have right before my back panel, I'm going to insert my stitch marker into there. And I'm going to be doing the same thing on the other side. So just to separate the sleeve and the body, I'm going to insert my stitch markers into there. Now I do have the same amount of stitches for my front and back panel, and then also for my sleeves. So if you guys already have my numbers, we have a total of 32 stitches for the front and 32 stitches for the back. Now on both sides for our sleeves, I have a total of 25 stitches on this side, and from this sleeve stitch marker over to this sleeve stitch marker, another 25. We just want to make sure that everything is nice and even. So make sure you have your stitch markers into the right stitch markers for your piece, and then we can get started on the front panel. Alright, so we're about to get started on the front panel, so I'm just going to take my shoulder band and put it off to the side for now. Now to get started on the body, we're going to do our underarm portion first. So we're all going to start by grabbing our 6mm hook, and then make a chain from mid-underarm down to where we want the bottom of the sweater to be, keeping in mind that we will have a bottom band, and making sure that our chain is in multiples of 3. So I want mine to be cropped. I'm going to start by making a chain that's about 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 18. Now that we have our chain, into the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a half double crochet and a double crochet because we're getting started on our sedge stitches right away. So we're going to skip that first chain that's nearest to our hook, and then into that second chain, we're going to start with a yarn over, insert into there with a half double crochet. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through. Once we have 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 3. And into that same first chain, we're going to do a double crochet as well. So insert your hook into that same first chain, pull through. Once we have 3 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that's how we start off every sedge stitch row. The first one is always going to be a half double crochet and a double crochet. Now once we have this, we're going to be skipping the next 2 chains that we have, and then into the third, we're going to be doing 1 single, 1 half double, and 1 double crochet. So we're going to skip 1, skip 2, into that third, we're going to insert our hook with a single crochet. So insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then into that same chain, we're going to be doing a half double crochet and a double crochet. So yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, into that same chain with a half double, and then into that same chain once more with a double crochet. Now the way that we just did this sedge stitch set, that's going to be how we do the rest, making our way all the way down. So let's do this again. We are going to skip 1 and skip 2. Now into that third chain, we're going to insert our hook with 1 single, 1 half double, and then 1 double crochet all into that same chain. Now all together, we should have 1, 2, 3 sedge stitch sets. Let's just do 1 more. We're going to skip 1, skip 2, and then into that third, we're going to insert with our first single crochet into that same stitch with a half double crochet, and then into that same stitch with a double crochet. And we're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down until we have just 1 stitch left. Alright, so we have made our way all the way down until we have just 1 chain left. And to close off this row, we are going to need to do an increase. Now this increase is going to be very different from any other increase. So all we're going to do into that last chain is do 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet, and then an extra double crochet. So basically another sedge stitch set with an extra double crochet into that last stitch. So all together, into that last chain that we have, we're going to insert with our first single crochet, into that same last stitch with our half double crochet, and then into that same last stitch, 2 double crochets. So there's our first, and then 1 more double crochet into that last stitch. Now we're doing our increases like that because if we just close this off with a regular increase of 4 single crochets or an increase of 4 half double crochets, this can start to curve. But since we're ending it on a double crochet, it gives us a really clean line that leads all the way up to our shoulder. And we're only going to be increasing into every other row. So getting started on our row 2 or our even number row, we aren't going to be doing an increase. So all we're going to do after we just finish that increase is chain 1, flip our work, and then we're going to do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down. So remember, our first sedge stitch is always going to be just a half double crochet and double crochet. So into the first stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert our hook into there with 1 half double crochet, and then into that same first stitch with 1 double crochet. And then everything else is going to be per usual. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and then into that third, a single, half double, and double crochet. So we're going to skip 1, skip 2, and then into there is a single, into that same stitch, a half double, and then into the same stitch, a double crochet. Let's do just one more set together. And a fun fact that I have for the sedge stitch, every sedge stitch that we have is going to be worked into the previous row's single crochet. So since we're skipping 1 and skipping 2, that next stitch should be a single crochet from our previous row, and that would be a little bit easier to tell because it's the lowest one out of our cluster. So skip 1, skip 2, into that following stitch with 1 single, 1 half double, and then 1 double crochet. And we're going to continue to do this until we have 2 stitches left. So we've made our way all the way down with our sedge stitches. Now to close off our row 2, or any even number row, we're going to skip that second to last stitch, and then just put 1 half double crochet into that last stitch so that we can have a blunt end. So we're going to yarn over, skip the second to last, and then into the last, insert with 1 half double crochet, and now our row 2 is all finished up. Now that we have that, let's just do the next row together. So to get started on every row, chain 1, and flip our work. Now, remembering the first sedge stitch set is always just going to be a half double crochet and a double crochet into that first stitch. We're going to yarn over, into that first stitch, insert with 1 half double, and then into that same first stitch with 1 double. Just like before, we're going to be skipping the following 2 stitches, and then into that next, 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet, and then 1 double crochet into that same stitch, and continue to do our sedge stitch, making our way all the way down until we have 2 stitches left. Alright, so we have made our way all the way down, and we should have just 2 stitches left. And since we're at the end of our row 3 or our odd number row, we're going to need to end with an increase. Now this is going to be the same increase that we did for row 1, so let's do this together. Since we have 2 stitches left, we're going to be skipping that second to last stitch, and then into that last stitch, we're going to insert with a single, a half double, and 2 double crochets. So skip 1, into the last stitch from our previous row, insert with 1 single, into that same last stitch, 1 half double, and then into that same last stitch with 2 double crochets. And that is our increase. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So every even number row will not have an increase in it. We're just going to end it with a half double crochet. And then every odd number row is going to have an increase, the same increase that we just did together. And just keep repeating those 2 rows until we get a portion that reaches from mid-underarm to the front of our body. And I'll meet you guys back right after an odd numbered row. Alright, I am back with my underarm portion. I have a total of 7 rows and my width is just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters, and we should have all ended right after an odd numbered row. Now from here, what we're going to do is make a chain that is in multiples of 3 that reaches all the way up until we are about 2 inches from the top of our shoulder. So I've already measured mine out. I need about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 15. Alright, so now that I have my chain, we can now connect it into the shoulder band that we've just made. So grabbing our shoulder band, I'm going to be inserting my hook into the stitch marker stitch that we have that is for the front panel. So since my dark blue stitch markers were my front and back panel, I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch. And all I'm going to do to connect it is yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And now that it's nice and connected, all we're going to do is just our set stitch rows with no increases and no decreases. So since we're currently into our stitch marker stitch, we do need to work our way up to the next row. So making sure that we're working into the front panel section that we have, we're going to insert our hook into that next available stitch that we have into the base with a slip stitch, and then we're going to flip our work. Now remembering that our sedge stitches always starts off with a half double and double crochet set, let's do that together. So into that first chain that we have, I'm going to insert with a half double crochet. And then into that same chain with a double crochet. Just like that. And then let's do our second one. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and then into the following stitch, we're going to do 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet, and then 1 double crochet. And we're just going to continue to do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down until we have 2 stitches left. Alright, so we've just made our way all the way down to the end, and we should have 2 stitches left. And since we're along the bottom, we're going to close it off with a half double crochet to make it blunt, just like how we've been doing. So yarn over, skip that second to last stitch, and then into the last, insert with 1 half double crochet, chain 1, and flip our work. And we're going to continue to do our sedge stitch, making our way all the way back up until we have 2 stitches right before the base, and I'll show you guys how we're going to connect it. Alright, so we have just made our way all the way back up. We should have 2 stitches left, and just like how we end every even number row, we're going to end all of our odd number rows with a half double crochet as well, because we don't need to be doing any increases or decreases right now. So all we're going to do is yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, skip the second to last stitch, and then into the last stitch from our previous row, insert with just 1 half double crochet, and now we're going to connect it into the base. So all that's going to be is finding that next available stitch that we have into the base, and just slip stitching it into there to close off this row. And then to work our way up to the next row, slip stitch up that next stitch into the base, and flip our work. And from here, just continue on with our sedge stitches with no increases and no decreases until we reach our next stitch marker. So let's just get this next row started off together. So just to remind you guys, the first sedge stitch is always just going to be a half double crochet and a double crochet. So into the first stitch from our previous row, insert with a half double, and then into that same first stitch, a double. Skip 2 stitches, and into the following stitch, a single crochet, a half double crochet, and then a double crochet, making sure that we are ending all rows now with a half double crochet stitch. And I will meet you guys back once we reach our next stitch marker stitch right over here, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can get started on our underarm. Alright, so I am back, and I have just made my way all the way across my shoulder band to my other front panel stitch marker. Now, once we worked into that stitch marker stitch, we all should have ended along the bottom, and now we can close off this front panel with our underarm portion. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made on this side that reached all the way up to our band. So if you guys saw my numbers, I made a chain of 15. So along this end, from the top, I counted down 15 stitches and then inserted my stitch marker. Now from here, since we all should be along the bottom, we're going to do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way up until we are 5 stitches right before our stitch marker, and then I'll meet you back so that we can do a decrease together. So I've just made my way all the way up with my sedge stitches, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches right before my stitch marker. And now from here, we're going to be doing a decrease of 4 double crochets, so let's get that started. We're all going to start with a yarn over, and we're going to skip that next stitch that we have. So we're going to skip 1 into that 4th to last stitch. We're going to insert, pull through, into that 3rd to last, insert, pull through, also into that 2nd to last, pull through, and then lastly into that last stitch that we have right before our stitch marker, insert, and pull through. Now all together, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook. And all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through the first 5 loops to get 2 loops on our hook, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through those 2. Now that's how we do our decrease for our underarm portion. And just like on the other side, we only did an increase into every other row. So going down this underarm portion, we're only going to do a decrease into every other row as well. So from here, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now starting with our first sedge stitch, which is always just a half double crochet and a double crochet into that first stitch. Skip 2 stitches and then a single, a half double, and then a double into that same stitch. Skip 2 and then repeat, making sure that we're closing off this row with just 1 half double crochet like how we've been doing this entire time. Now at the end of that row, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way back down until we have 5 stitches left, and I want to decrease with you just once more. So we have made our way all the way back down. With our sedge stitch row, we have left 5 stitches, and we just want to decrease together once more. So just like the previous decrease that we did, we're going to yarn over, skip that following stitch, and then into that 4th to last stitch, insert your hook, pull through into that 3rd to last stitch, pull through into that 2nd to last stitch, pull through, and then into that last stitch into our row and pull through. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook. So just yarn over, pull through the first 5 loops to get 2 loops. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2. And that's it. From here, we're going to keep repeating these 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion right over here. And when we have the same amount of rows, then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so I have just finished up my underarm portion, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut once when I had the same amount of rows as my other underarm portion. Now the entirety of our front panel is all finished up, so we're going to repeat everything that we did here for the front panel, but do it for the back panel, and it's going to be done all exactly the same way. So do the same underarm portion, make the same chain, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into our back panel stitch marker stitch, work our way all the way across, and then close off our back panel with the same underarm that we did for the front panel. Get that entire piece done, and then I'll meet you guys back. Alright, I am back, and I have just finished up doing the entirety of my back panel. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now the last thing we're going to have to do for this section is seam our sides together. So let's all start by flipping our work wrong side out. So now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we are going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to be inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now from here, we're just going to be doing a single crochet seam, making sure that we're working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. So let's do this together. Start by inserting your hook into that first stitch into the front panel, and then find that first stitch into the back panel, insert your hook into there, and then single crochet them together. And that's it. Let's do this again. Start by finding that next stitch into the front panel. Mine is this chain, so I'm just going to insert my hook into that gap, and then into the next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and single crochet. Let's just do one more. This is my next stitch into the front panel, so I'm going to insert my hook into that gap again, into that next stitch into the back panel, and then single. And continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. Alright, so both of our sides are all seamed up, and the next thing we're going to start working on is our sleeve. So now we're going to want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seams that we have for the sides are now flipped along the inside. And we're going to start by inserting our 6mm hook into the stitch that's nearest to our side seam, and then we're going to start by single crocheting along the entirety of our armhole. So now that our hook is into this spot, we're going to be inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and for the underarm rows that we have, we're going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So chain 1, and we're going to find our first side row, and this is mine right here. So into that top loop, into that first side row that we have, I'm going to insert my hook with just 1 single crochet. And this is my next side row. Into that top loop, I'm going to insert with 2 single crochets. So there is 1. And then into the top of that same side row, in with my second single crochet. And that's it. Let's do that again. This is my next side row that I have right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook into there with just 1 single crochet. And then this is my next side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2. So there's 1. And then there's 2. And that's it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. And then once we reach the shoulder portion, just put 1 single crochet into each of these stitches. I'll meet you back right before we get started on working into the band. Alright, so we've just single crocheted our way all the way up. And right before we get started with single crocheting into the band, we're going to take that sleeve stitch marker that we have and take that out because we don't need that anymore. And then we're going to be inserting it into the last stitch that we made for the first half of our single crochet. So into the last stitch that's worked into the shoulder. So from here, all we're going to do is find that next available stitch into the band and insert your hook into there with 1 single crochet. And continue to put 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way across our band. And I'll meet you back just once more right before we get started on working down our shoulder. Alright, so we have just single crocheted across our band, and now we're going to start single crocheting down our shoulder again. But all we're going to do is find that first stitch and insert your hook into there with 1 single crochet, but we are going to be inserting our stitch marker into that next stitch that we do. So the first single crochet that we do into the shoulder, just so that both sides that we have are even. Well, all we're going to do from here is continue to put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Where you reach the underarm, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row, and then slip stitch into that chain space. Alright, so now that our single crochet row is all finished up, the next thing we're going to do is make a chain, making sure that it's in multiples of 3, the length that we want our sleeve to be, keeping in mind that we will have a cuff as well. So I need my chain to be just about 15 inches or 38 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 60. And now that we have our chain, we're going to do our sedge stitch, making our way all the way back down. So right after our chain, inserting our hook into that second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with our first sedge stitch, which is going to be just a half double and a double crochet into that same chain. So yarn over, we're going to skip 1, and into that second chain, go ahead and insert your hook with 1 half double crochet, and then into that same chain with a double crochet. There's our first sedge stitch. Let's do the next one. Skip the 2 following stitches, and then into the next, we're going to insert with a single, into that same chain with a half double, and then into that same chain with a double crochet. And that is it. We're going to continue to do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down until we have 1 chain left. Alright, so we have made our way all the way down with our first row. We should have 1 chain left, and we are going to need to do an increase. Now this increase is going to be the same increase that we did for the underarm portion, so let's just do it really quickly together as a refresher. So into that last chain, I'm going to insert into there with one single, one half double, and then 2 double crochets. So go ahead and insert into that last chain with your first single, into that same last chain with a half double, and then into that same last chain with 2 double crochets. So there's my first, and then here is my second. Now once we have that increase, we are going to be slip stitching it into the base. So we're going to start by counting up the next 2 available stitches. So there's 1, and then there's 2. Into that second stitch, I'm going to insert my hook with a slip stitch to close off this row. Now to work our way up to the next row, we're going to slip stitch up just that next stitch, and then flip our work. Now once when our work is flipped, just like how we did the underarm, we're only going to be increasing into every other row. So when we're working our way out towards the edge of our sleeve, no increases. So just start with your first sedge stitch, which is just a half double and then a double crochet into that same first stitch. Right after that, you're going to skip 1, skip 2, into that next, insert with a single, a half double, and then a double all into that same stitch. Now continue to do our sedge stitch, making our way all the way down, making sure that we end this row with a half double crochet because we need the edge of our sleeve to be blunt. At the end of our row, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way back, and I will meet you back when we have 2 stitches left just to increase together and connect it into the base once more. Alright, so I've made my way all the way down and I'm nearly finished with my 3rd row. We're just going to increase together and then I'll let you guys continue on with this until we reach our stitch marker. So we should all have 2 stitches left. What we're going to do is the same increase that we've been doing. So we're going to skip that second to last stitch, and then into the last, we're going to insert, starting with a single crochet, into that same last stitch with a half double crochet, and then into that same last stitch with 2 double crochets. So there's my first, there's my second, and now we're just going to connect it into the base. So start by counting up the next 2 available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2. Into that next stitch, insert with a slip stitch to close off this 3rd row, and then we need to work our way up to the next row. So find that next available stitch, slip stitch into there, flip our work, and then continue to do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down, remembering that when we're working out towards the bottom of our sleeve, we won't have any increases to do. So just keep repeating these 2 rows until we make our way all the way up to our stitch marker. And then I'll meet you guys back to show you guys how we're going to be working into the band. Alright, so I am back with the first bit of my sleeve. I've made my way all the way up, doing my increases into every other row until I reached my stitch marker that I have. And now I'm ready to work into the band. Now working into the band, it's going to be connected into the base a little bit differently, and we aren't going to be doing any increases or decreases at all. So let's just get this started. Since we all should have ended along the base, inserting our last row into that stitch marker stitch, working into the base, working into the band, all we're going to do is find that next available stitch, slip stitch up that stitch to work our way up to the next row, flip our work, and then do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down per usual with no increases and no decreases. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and I will meet you guys back when we have just 2 stitches left. Alright, so I have made my way all the way down and then all the way back up towards my base. With the shoulder band portion of my sleeve, we aren't going to be doing any increases or decreases, and we should have 2 stitches right before our base. All we're going to do is connect it the same way that we connected the body portion. So we're going to end this row off with a half double crochet. So yarn over, skip that second to last stitch, and then into that last stitch, insert with just 1 half double crochet, and then into that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch it into there just to close it off. And then just to work our way up to the next row, slip stitch up that next available stitch, flip our work, and then do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down. And that's it. We're just going to keep repeating the 2 rows that we did together. So basically the same way that we did the body portion. I'll meet you guys back once we reach our next stitch marker stitch, and then I'll show you guys how we're going to be doing our decreases. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way across my band until I am one stitch right before my next stitch marker. And all we're going to do from here is do our decreases, making our way all the way down. So if you guys ended along the outer edge like me, we're going to work our way all the way down until we have 5 stitches left, and then I will meet you back just to show you how we're going to decrease and how we're going to be inserting it into the base. If you guys ended along the base, then that is completely fine as well. We're going to be doing the same sequence that we did for the increase side. So anytime we're working out towards the bottom, we aren't going to be doing any increases. So for those of you at the base, just slip stitch into the base the same way that we would. So just slip stitch into that next available stitch and then work our way out with no increases and no decreases. When we reach the end of that row, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way back until we have 5 stitches left. And then in the next clip, I'll remind you guys how we're going to be doing our decreases and how we're going to connect it once more. Alright, so we are back and we should all have 5 stitches left right before the base. So just to count that out, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stitches. This decrease is going to be the same decrease that we did for the underarm as well, so let's just get that started. We're going to start with the yarn over, skip that 5th to last stitch, and then into that 4th to last, insert your hook, pull through, 3rd to last, pull through, 2nd to last, pull through, and then that last stitch and pull through. Now we should have a total of 6 loops left on our hook. So all we're going to do is yarn over, pull through the first 5 loops, giving us 2 loops left on our hook, yarn over, and pull through those 2 loops. And from here, we're going to need to connect it into the base. Now connecting our decrease portion is going to be the same way that we connected the increase portion. So when working into the base, we're going to be counting up the next 2 available stitches. So here's my first one. Mine is a stitch marker stitch. And here is the second one. Go ahead and insert your hook into that second stitch with a slip stitch to close off this row. Now we're only going to be decreasing into every other row, so just to work our way up to the next row, only slip stitch up that next available stitch, flip our work, and then do our sedge stitches, making our way all the way down. And then from there, we're just going to keep repeating these 2 rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can seam everything together. Alright, so I am back and I have just made my way all the way down with my decrease side for my sleeve. And I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam our sleeve together. So the first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. Alright, so now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're going to be doing a single crochet seam, so the same seam that we did for the sides. So let's just do the first one together. Start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, and then find that next available stitch into the back panel. And then once we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're going to single crochet them together. And that's it. We're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down. And when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so now that we have just finished up seaming our sleeve, the next thing we're going to do is our cuff. So the first thing we're going to have to do is single crochet along the bottom of our sleeve, but we are going to need to cinch it. So we're going to be decreasing into every 2 side rows. So we're all going to start by inserting our 5mm hook into any side row that we have along the bottom of our sleeve. I'm next going to insert my yarn onto my hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now from here, we're going to find our first side row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop, yarn over, and pull through. This is my next side row that I have right here. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook, yarn over, and pull through. Now that we have 3 loops on our hook, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Now that is our decrease of 2 single crochets. Let's do this again. I'm going to find my next side row. This is mine right here, and insert my hook into that top loop, yarn over, pull through. Find my next side row. This is mine right here. Insert my hook into that top loop, yarn over, pull through, and pull through all 3. Now that's my next decrease of 2. And we're going to continue to decrease into every 2 side rows that we have, making our way all the way around and then slip stitch into that chain space that we have. So our single crochet row is all finished up, and now we're going to make a chain the length that we want our cuff to be. Now I would like for my cuff to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 10. And now that we have our chain, we're going to do a slip stitch row, so start by blocking off that last chain. Do an extra chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert our hook with a slip stitch. So once we have 2 loops on our hook, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through both of those loops. Let's do that again. Into that next chain, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And a quick tip that I have when we're doing slip stitches is make sure that we're not accidentally tugging on our working yarn after we finish every stitch. Otherwise, the following rows can be really tight to work into. But continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're now going to need to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is find that next available stitch into the base and insert your hook into there with a slip stitch to close off this first row. And we do need to work our way up to the next row, so slip stitch up that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and now we're going to be doing a row of back loop slip stitches. So how we do that is start by finding that first stitch from our previous row, and then we're going to insert our hook into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, and then slip stitch per usual, so yarn over and pull through both loops. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch, insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over, pull through, next stitch into that back loop and pull through. And continue to do this, making our way all the way down, and remember not to tug too tightly after every stitch. And now that we're at the end of our row 2, since we're along the outer edge, to get started on our row 3, we are going to chain 1, flip our work, and then continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, just like our previous row, and I'll meet you back at the base just once more. And now that we've made our way all the way back down with our 3rd row, we're going to connect it into the base together. So just like the previous row, start by finding that next available stitch, insert your hook into there with a slip stitch to close off this first row, and then just to work our way up to the next row, work slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and then do more back loop slip stitches. And from here, we're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows that we did together with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left, and then I will meet you back so we can seam our cuff together. Alright, so we have just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into the base, so now we're just going to seam it together. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so the same seam that we did for the shoulder band. So I'm just going to do the first few stitches with you guys. So we want to start off by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, and we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through everything. So what we're going to do is start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop, and then we're going to find that first stitch into the back panel and insert only in through that back loop. Now once we have those 3 loops on our hook, all we're going to do is yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert only in through that front loop, and then into the next stitch into the back panel, insert only in through that back loop, and when we have 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that's it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. I have just finished up doing both of my sleeves, and now the next thing we're going to do is our bottom band. So start off by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, and we're going to insert our 5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom. From here, we are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So start by finding that first side row that we have. This is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook into there with just 1 single crochet. This is my next side row. Find that top loop, insert with a single crochet, and let's just do 1 more set. This is my next side row that I have right here. Find that top loop with one single, and this is my next side row. Insert your hook into there with one single, and continue to do this, making our way all the way around and slip stitch into that chain space. Alright, so I just made my way all the way around with my single crochet row along the bottom of my piece. And now, just like how we did for the cuff, we're going to make a chain the length that we want our bottom band to be. Now, I want mine to be just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 15. And now that we have our chain, just like how we did for the cuff, we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything. And continue to put one slip stitch into every chain, making sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch. So now that we put one slip stitch into every chain, we're going to need to connect it into the base. So all we're going to do is find that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to close off this first row. Now, just to work our way up to the next row with each other, find that next stitch into the base, slip stitch into there, flip our work, and we're going to be doing rows of back loop slip stitches now. So this is going to be the same exact way that we did the cuff. So from here, continue to put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of this row, chain 1, flip our work, and then put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, connecting it into the base the same way that we just did. And that's it. We're going to continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left so that we can seam it all up together. Alright, so I'm back with my bottom band. I have made my way all the way around, and now we're going to seam it. Now this is going to be the same seam that we did for the cuff, so an outside loop slip stitch seam, so let's get that started. Let's all start by making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, and we're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, yarn over, pull through everything, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now, since we already know how to do the seam, we're just going to do the first one together. So start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop, and then find that next available stitch into the back panel and insert only in through that back loop. And when we have those 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that is it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so we are back and our bottom band is all seamed up and we are actually all done now. So the last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you guys have it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Check us out on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!